Good afternoon, everybody. David Shuster here. Welcome to all of our affiliated, syndicated stations across the nation and around the world who are listening to us on weactradio.com, stations in Chicago. Now look, we got so many broadcast stations over terrestrial radio, folks. If you're driving around Chicago or Columbus, Ohio, or Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Oklahoma, or parts of Pennsylvania, Boston, New England, wherever, you can find We Act Radio and our programming, Take Action News. This hour, and I am so excited to talk to this guest. Let's just go ahead and introduce him. Kevin Roose writes for New York Magazine. He has done an amazing expose on an organization that's involved with trying to fix the debt. And it sounds like it's a group of citizens who are concerned about the amount of money that our government is spending and the credit and sort of what we're piling up in debt on our children and grandchildren's generation. But in fact, these are not ordinary citizens. Kevin Roose, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So who's behind this group?
Well, it was started a few months ago by a coalition of people, some of which are familiar names like Pete Peterson, who's a Blackstone. He founded the private equity firm Blackstone. He's a billionaire many times over, and he's been sort of an anti-deficit crusader for many years. So he funded part of it. A woman named Maya McGinnis was put in charge of sort of the PR campaign, and it's now grown into. I mean, I cover Wall Street, and I first heard about this several months ago, and I heard about more and more people on Wall Street, prominent people getting involved, CEOs, CFOs, hedge fund managers, private equity guys, very wealthy people getting involved in larger and larger numbers, and now they're up to almost 200, sort of prominent business people who are involved with this campaign now. It's really remarkable how quickly it's spread.
And it's a campaign essentially to, use this issue of concern, the public concern about the debt, and to make sure that when people express their concern, when Congress acts, that they don't do anything that might hurt the bottom lines of corporations or the wealthiest among us. Is that right?
Well, it's not clear. I mean, I think part of that is true. I think they definitely want to avert the fiscal cliff and reach a deal that's sort of bipartisan in nature. Some of their members are very concerned about keeping tax rates low for the wealthy, and some of their members have said, look, we expect our taxes to go up. We're not, going to fight that tooth and nail. So they haven't. The group doesn't actually take an official stance. It's a sort of a bipartisan. They sort of couch their efforts in a lot of sort of talk, and they don't make a lot of very specific proposals about how they want to fix the debt. They're basically just amassing this huge quantity of business leaders to pressure the president and Congress to get a deal done by January 1st.
Is it fair to describe this as sort of an Astroturf campaign? And what I mean is, one of the, for example, Dick Armey, a former member of Congress, he just left this organization known as FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks was the group that funded the early efforts, actually many of the efforts, by the Tea Party gang and their rallies and protests and whatnot. And they got a lot of corporate money behind that. Is it similar in that respect, and that you have this sort of group that's bankrolling the organization, bankrolling the concern in the hopes that they then attract perhaps people on the right or citizens to band together and have demonstrations and protests?
I think there's some of that going on. I mean, the social organization of this group is really remarkable. They started off by having dinners at Senator Mark Warner's house, a year ago, more than a year ago. And recently they got two guys to sort of head up the recruitment drive. They got this Steve Ratner, who's sort of a prominent Wall Street guy who's a Democrat, and they got this guy named Jimmy Lee, who's the sort of number two guy at J.P. Morgan, who's a famous Wall Street deal maker and is a Republican. And the two of them basically got together and started making calls to all their friends, their business associates, their clients, and they sort of, it was almost, you would almost call it a grassroots campaign, except this is the sort of corporate version of a grassroots campaign. And one by one, they started, convincing people to write checks and to join up with this movement. And so it's really, you rarely see Wall Street CEOs, combining their efforts on a political effort. These guys are fierce rivals in almost every other sense. But right now, they're all involved in this organization, and it's sort of fun for them, too. They get to sort of hobnob with all their CEO buddies, and so it's a sort of social group, too.
And is the concern, again, that if if nothing happens by the end of the year, I mean, or is there concern that in the final few weeks that there might be some grand bargain or some grand deal that essentially rewrites the tax code, that it's not just that Congress and administration may agree to continue the tax relief, the lower tax rates on 98% of Americans making less than $200,000, but that in addition to allowing tax rates to go up back to 39% on people making more than $200,000, that there might be something else that's part of the deal, that there might be certain loopholes that are closed, that certain breaks that these corporations are receiving, that those breaks would go away.
Sure, I think that's certainly part of it. It's not an official part of Fix the Debt sort of platform, but they do want to, reduce deficit, entitlement spending while sort of keeping the tax code more or less as it is, raising revenue, but they don't specify how. I think it's safe to say that what they're most worried about is the markets, whether, if a deal isn't reached on January 1st, whether the Dow Jones will swing, 100 points in a day or something like that. I mean, that would really, it's hard to plan for your business when you don't know what the market effect of a fiscal cliff is going to be.
We're talking with Kevin Roose of New York Magazine. He's written an amazing expose of an organization that says that it's focused on trying to fix the debt, but it's comprised largely of CEOs and Wall Street power brokers. Kevin, as far as the aims in terms of what these folks want to get out of this longer term, do you get the sense that this organization that is banded together, that they will live well past the end of this year, but they will be a force to be reckoned with in terms of lobbying early in the next year, assuming that major tax reform and some of these big issues continue?
Well, that was one of the most amazing things, is no one really knows. I mean, I had some people, as I was reporting this story, tell me, we're a single issue group, and once a deal is brokered, we'll go away. And I had other people say, well, we sort of like this. I mean, we sort of like the banding together of all our sort of peers in the corporate elite, and maybe we'll take on, another issue after this is done. So I think there's some division within the group about what happens next. But it's certainly, I've been covering Wall Street for a while, and I've never seen, a coordinated effort like this among these guys.
You mentioned before the issue of entitlements, that a lot of these folks represent organizations that are concerned perhaps about entitlement spending and whatever obligation that they may have towards their employees. How does that play out?
Well, Pete Peterson, of course, who started some of the predecessor organizations to fix the debt, has been for many, many years saying that we need to reform entitlement programs to cut spending on Social Security and Medicare. And that's a part of the Fix the Debt platform. They do want entitlement reform, and so people on the left and even some sort of nonpartisan groups are accusing them of sort of being a Trojan horse for making for an agenda that wants to sort of make deep cuts to these entitlement programs that primarily benefit people who aren't the wealthiest Americans.
And for people who are listening or watching us, may think, well, why would a corporate CEO care about whether somebody, what their Social Security benefits or Medicare benefits are? Is the general theory that this is a group of people who are convinced that if the government is continue to have this obligation to pay out these benefits, that at a certain point that then hurts corporate America because the government has less that it can do to assist or help corporations, or because general economic policy gets squeezed?
Well, that might be it, but I think more of it is the sort of corporate mindset of, if you run a Fortune 500 company and you have a budget deficit, you can either raise more money or you can cut spending, and a lot of these guys are very used to cutting spending during lean times in their business, and so it seems obvious to them that if you have a budget deficit, the way you get at that is through cutting spending. The most obvious place to start cutting spending for these guys is entitlement programs. And again, I think these guys genuinely are worried about the long-term deficit situation. A lot of them do think it's a real problem that's endangering the future, but I think because they're not the primary recipients of entitlement programs, because none of their friends rely on Social Security or Medicare to sort of pay the bills and ease their way into retirement, I don't think that cutting those programs to them registers as a major deal.
Kevin Roose of New York Magazine. Kevin, thanks so much for being part of Take Action News. Great piece in New York Magazine. We appreciate you coming on the program to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And folks, Kevin Roose, if you missed any part of the interview, actually any part of our program, you can always catch our podcast on iTunes, or you can go to WeActRadio, TakeActionNews.com. Great podcast. You can listen to any one of these 3 hours at your convenience. Coming up next, we'll talk with our own Charlie Mitchell, editor-in-chief of Take Action News, about what's going on Capitol Hill, specifically the effort by Democrats to get things done a little bit faster in the United States Senate through something known as filibuster reform. Charlie Mitchell on Take Action News after this.